Delegate Gutierrez, Ms. Matthews, and Mr. Anderson. And this is about the Chesapeake Bay. What is the greatest threat to the Chesapeake Bay, and what specific actions would you take in Congress to address it? First, we'll start with Delegate Gutierrez.
Well, obviously the biggest threat to the Chesapeake Bay is what we are all doing to not ensure that it is not contaminated. We have tried year after year at the state level. We've invested significantly to ensure that the Chesapeake Bay will be restored to its pristine quality someday. But we are also seeing that there are agricultural runoffs, that there are other contaminants and pollution that is unfortunately making our struggle more and more difficult. I absolutely support the organizations that have focused and are dedicated to look at the saving of the bay as a regional problem. It's not going to be done by just us here in Maryland. We need to engage Virginia, and we need to engage the states that are at the very top of the ladder as water flows into our area. So our struggle is not over. We must ensure that we are putting in place the legislative protections to hold back, to push back on those contaminations that are destroying the quality of our bay. Thank you.
I agree. We are the greatest threat to the Chesapeake Bay, and it is our responsibility, not only the state of Maryland, but in conjunction with all of the states surrounding the Chesapeake Bay and the states that have water and farm runoff that go into streams that feed ultimately into the Chesapeake Bay. I'm looking out in the audience and I see a woman here, and I wasn't expecting her tonight, but she's Mari Snyder, who worked with me at Marriott International. And together we created the environmental strategy for that company, which did not exist before we put it together. One of the things that we did was take our team out to the Chesapeake Bay, and we actually worked in the oyster restoration project so that the people that worked with us could see firsthand what is happening to the ecosystems of the bay as a result of all this, to build that knowledge and that passion. And so ultimately we've got to teach farmers who have to have a livelihood how to farm more sustainably, because that is a big problem in terms of the runoff. We have to educate our leaders, like Governor Hogan, about what we need to do. We have to educate those in Congress about the need for the EPA oversight of the Chesapeake Bay, which is not only this area's greatest natural resource, it is one of the country's greatest natural resources. So I think it's a partnership of individuals who care, of farmers who need to get instruction and help on how to do better, of business that can actually lead standards on this, and government working cooperatively across federal, state, and regional governments.
Anderson is going to speak next, and then we have an additional candidate who's running as an independent. We're going to let her come up in a second after we finish this last statement.
Well, the Chesapeake Bay, it's a big bay, it's a big problem. It applies to Maryland, it applies to 6 other states. The issue, and I echo some of the points that Kathleen just raised, it's a local issue, it's a state issue, it's a federal issue. And at the federal level, one thing that comes to mind is there are cases working their way up the courts. In fact, one Supreme Court case, Michigan versus EPA, really a pro-business case, which has to be countered with legislation in Congress to try and increase the enforcement capacity that EPA has. So, as as the courts start to try and overturn efforts to clean the bay, Congress, so if I was elected, Congress must pass laws to strengthen the enforcement capacity of EPA. I think that's it. Thank you.